Okay, so what we're going to do right now is I'm going to do a couple of these problems for you, and then from there what we are going to do is I'm going to have you do a couple. I like to call this kind of like the movie lesson, where I do some, you do some, you watch how it goes, and then hopefully you learn how to do this. That's the plan. We'll see if it works out. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to be finding the missing sides using our trig ratios. Now the steps, I just put them in I think they're over there, I don't know, depending on how this video works out. The steps to find a side using trig. Step number 1, we always label the side you know and the side you are looking for using the reference angle. So if our reference angle is right here, then the side we know is our hypotenuse, and the side we are looking for is our opposite side. Step number 1, done. Let me zoom in a little bit more so you guys can see this. Hopefully that's better. Step number 1, finished. We labeled our sides given the reference angle. Now we have to decide what trig ratio to use. Just like in the Kahoot the other day, I know the hypotenuse and I'm looking for the opposite. What trig ratio uses opposite and hypotenuse? That's our sine. By the way, I always write it out. So, opposite and hypotenuse, that's our sine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write our proportion. And we write it as the sine of our reference angle, which is 28 degrees, is equal to opposite, or x, over our hypotenuse, which is 19. Opposite over hypotenuse. Step number... now we have our proportion. Step number 4, solve for the missing side. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to show you how I like to do it on my calculator, but I'm just going to cross multiply, just like I did in our warm-up, and I get x times 1 equals x, and sine of 28 degrees times 19 is sine of 28 degrees times 19. Now, calculator time. Oh, I better zoom out a little. Calculator time. Now, depending on what type of calculator you have and how your calculator works is really going to depend on how you do this, because some calculators work slightly different than others. You might have noticed that sometimes you have this little thing that says DEG, or degrees. Since we're using degrees and we're using the tangent ratio, or the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios, it has to be in degrees. If it's in radians or RAD, it doesn't mean you're rad, it means your calculator's in the wrong mode. And if you need to work on that, we can figure out how to do that later. But make sure your calculator's in degrees. If you have a smartphone calculator, it's almost always in degrees. I don't even think you can... oh yeah, there. See how it says radians? We don't want that. We want degrees. So I'll show you how to do the calculator first, then the smartphone. So let's move my face out of the way. Alright, so now what we're going to do is, now we've set this up, all we have to do is punch this into our calculator. So we hit sine of 28 degrees, close parentheses, times 19. And we get 8.91958. This says round to the nearest tenth. So this 1 makes that stay a 9. So x is equal to 8.9. That's it. Like I said, most of this is just a lot of calculator crunching. Sorry. I just wanted to look at something real quick. Oh yeah, I was going to show you how to do it on here. So notice on the calculator, let's get my face out of the way again. On the calculator, you had to hit sine, then the degrees, then times 19. On the phone, if you do that, sine of 28 gives you nothing. So on this, what you have to do is you have to hit the angle first, 28, then hit sine, then times that by, what was it, 19? And you get 8.91. So it's the exact same thing, except we just have to figure out whether we're filling in the parentheses. I actually like the calculator better because I like seeing this written out. Where this, if you just hit that degree, then you hit sine, it gives you the ratio for it. But all the ratios are stored in both of these. I'm going to be using my calculator because I like to show this. Sine of 28 times 19 is exactly what I had here when I solved my proportion. This is how we get it done. Cool, let's do another one. Let's do number 2. Step number 1, I label my sides. Let's see, our reference angle is here, so this is our opposite, and this is our adjacent side. We're missing our hypotenuse. So which ratio uses opposite and adjacent? That's tangent, right there, our tangent ratio. So let's write our proportion. Tangent of our reference angle, 41 degrees, is equal to opposite, which is x, over adjacent, which is 32. Write our proportion, and now we can cross multiply and solve. 1 times x gives us x. Tangent of 41 times 32 gives us tangent of 41 degrees times 32. Now all we need to do, x is already solved, so we just plug this into our calculator. Tangent of 41 degrees times 32 gives us 27.817. So I'm going to round that to, that 1 keeps this in 8, so x is equal to 27.8. Awesome. Let's do another one. I still have my SOHCAHTOA there. That's good. Reference angle, 21 degrees, making this our adjacent side, making this our hypotenuse. So I label the one I know and the one I'm looking for. Now I write my ratio here. Well, what ratio uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse? Adjacent and hypotenuse, that's our cosine. So the cosine of our reference angle, 21 degrees, is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Some people actually write this out like adjacent over hypotenuse, and then they write it out again. I don't really like that because it gets me confused, but if you need to write that out, adjacent over hypotenuse, and then write x for our adjacent side and 26 for our hypotenuse, that's fine. We just put it over 1, we now have our proportion, and we cross multiply. X times 1 gives us x. Cosine of 21 degrees times 26. And now we plug this into our calculator. Cosine of 21 times 26 gives us 24.27. That 7 rounds this to a 3. So we get x is equal to 27.3. All right. I think you guys kind of get the gist of this. This has been pretty easy so far because we're multiplying the missing side by 1 on all of these, but I want to do one where we're not going to multiply the missing side times 1, and there's an extra step involved, but if we set it up for a proportion, it will always be solved using the same, I guess you say, same mentality or same idea. So let's go ahead and let's do number 5. We're going to set it up doing the same steps. Step number 1, reference angle, and label our sides. Opposite, hypotenuse, and let's figure out what trig ratio we're going to use. Well, opposite and hypotenuse, I know that that is opposite hypotenuse, that's our sine. So we're going to be using our sine ratio. So the sine of 33 degrees will equal the opposite over the hypotenuse, 15 over x. Now I know what some of you are thinking. I see what you mean, Mr. Hayden. Now when we cross multiply, sorry, zoom in there. Now when we cross multiply on this, we get x times the sine of 33 equals 15 times 1. So I'm just going to write that. X times the sine of 33 degrees equals 15 times 1, or 15. Now we have to solve for x, meaning x is not by itself yet. So I would divide both sides by the sine of 33 degrees. Why? Because that's just a number. Remember, when we plug that into our calculator, we're just going to get a random number, not a random number, but a number for that. A number that will just keep an irrational number that will not repeat. So I'm just using it kind of as like a placeholder, 33 degrees. These cancel out because they're inverse operations, and I get x is equal to 15 over the sine of 33 degrees. Now that I have that solved, I can plug that into my calculator. And let's go ahead and do that. So I say 15 divided by, I like to put this in parentheses just because I want to make sure my calculator doesn't take 15 divided by the sine. So I like to do as the whole thing, sine of 33 degrees, close those parentheses, and we get 27.54. This 4 makes that a 5, and we get x is equal to 27.5. So notice if we are solving our proportion correct, we're just using this, and then once we get x by itself, we can just plug it into the calculator. We're just doing a lot. Like I said at the very beginning, this chapter is very calculator heavy, meaning we're going to be punching a lot of stuff into our calculator. But if we know our ratios and our sides, how to label them, it's just simple proportions, like you guys did last chapter. All right. Should we do one more? Yeah, let's do one more. Wait, how long is this video? Ooh, I better stop. This video is getting really long. Okay. We're going to do... Yeah, let's just stop this video. It's getting way too long. Follow your steps.